Good evening, you're watching Live at 5, live from Hemel Hempstead at the scene of the largest fire of its type in peacetime Europe. 3 explosions rocked this fuel depot early this morning. 43 people were injured, 2 of them seriously. Buildings, cars, trees and the surrounding area were all completely destroyed. More than 60 million gallons of petrol went up. Witnesses report seeing a 50-foot high ball of flames. Thick plumes of smoke visible from space are spreading across southern England and out towards the continent. More than 2,000 people have been moved from their homes. Police are advising others to stay inside and keep their windows closed. Hundreds of firefighters are tackling the blaze, which is expected to burn on for several days, and there could be more explosions.
This is Live at 5 with Jeremy Thompson.
Very good evening. A huge fire continues to burn behind me in the night sky here at the country's 5th largest oil storage depot, which was ripped apart by 3 explosions early this morning. A fire chief described it as the largest peacetime incident of its type in Europe. The first blast was heard more than 40 miles away. Flames leapt high into the sky. Casualties are still being treated in hospital. 1 patient is in intensive care. Police say they're treating the blasts as accidents. The M1 motorway nearby has been closed and will remain so for the rest of the day.
The blast, just minutes after 6 a.m, shattered the peace of a frosty Sunday morning. It ripped through Britain's 5th largest oil depot and woke people from their beds more than 40 miles away. As police hurriedly cleared the immediate area around the site, the fireball rose more than 100 feet into the air, and thick, acrid smoke turned the morning sky orange and black.
Let's go, keep going or you'll be arrested.
Footage from a Sky News viewer even captured one of the secondary blasts. Tanker driver Terry Hine had arrived at the depot minutes earlier and had noticed something wrong.
I could see in between the tanks and it just seems like so much. It looked like smoke just coming out the side of one of the containers. But where I've only been there 6 months, I didn't know. I just thought they might have been cooling off the tanks or whatever. And the guy from the Texaco drivers and that started walking away toward the gates, telling everyone to get away. And then all of a sudden we heard all the alarm bells ringing in the terminal, and we must have took 5 or 6 more steps, and then there was just a massive explosion. All stuff was flying past us, and we did run. We really did run. I've never run like that before.
First light revealed just how badly the surrounding area had been devastated. Cars and houses battered and broken by the blast wave.
I didn't know what it was. I thought we were being burgled. I've grabbed, as daft as it sounds, I've grabbed a golf club, run outside because all the alarms were going off with the cars, ran outside, and then I saw the smoke and the fire. And of course the other neighbours started coming out, and then the realisation that there had been a massive explosion just hit us.
Out of my daughter's bedroom, the flames were, which is right back over there, the flames are massive, and we didn't know what was going on. Thought it was a bomb or an aeroplane going down, or we just didn't know.
Just went and bang, it sounded like something, sounded like a missile or something. You know what, it wasn't, but it sounded like there was a big whoosh and a bang, and that was it. Frightened us all. We didn't know what to do. As you can see, the police and we only live around the corner, but our house is alright. There's other houses in the street that have had the windows blown out and whatever as well, so I don't know, it's all very frightening.
Dozens of residents from the neighbouring area of Leverstock Green have been evacuated to a leisure centre a safe distance away.
We thought we'd been broken into because we went downstairs and the whole of our patio door, it was all like, all the glass was shattered, it had been blown in, and so it wasn't until we went outside until we realised that it was a fire. Like the whole sky was just orange.
We went down into the lounge and the fireplace had blown out into the lounge. The landslider doors had blown off their tracks. All the doors were blown open.
That no one died has been described by police as miraculous. Had this been a weekday, the staff here would have been ripped to shreds by flying glass. Thankfully, at 6 a.m. on a Sunday, these business units neighbouring the depot were deserted. Deputy Prime Minister John Prescott has been meeting with the emergency services and has praised their response to the incident. Fire crews, though, still face a daunting task to bring this blaze under control. Such is the intensity of the heat and the volatility of the materials involved, it's still too dangerous to enter the depot and attack the route of the blaze. More resources are on their way from neighbouring fire brigades.
Our plan of action is we have a team of our own fire experts, including experts from the oil industry, on working out a plan of attack to actually tackle the fire. What we need to do, as I said earlier, is to have enough resources and enough foam concentrate in place before we mount an attack. And those resources are starting to gather near the scene, and they're coming from as far away as Humberside and Lancashire to make sure we have enough foam to put on the fire and sustain a continuous attack.
Tonight, the blaze remains well and truly alight, and it could take several days to put out. Paul Brennan, Sky News.
Well, let's take you through what we know about this morning's events. Our live location here is very near to the site of the blast of the Buncefield fuel terminal in Leverstock Green, just on the outskirts of Hemel Hempstead. It is the 5th largest oil storage facility in the UK and a major distribution terminal, storing oil, petrol and kerosene. And of course it's a key supplier of aviation fuel for Heathrow and Luton airports. The first explosion happened at just after 6 o'clock this morning. Then 2 smaller blasts hit the terminal around 20 minutes later. More than 100 firefighters have been called to the scene. They say it could be days before the fire is finally extinguished. The skies in the air have turned black with smoke all day, and it's covered a huge area of southern England, now travelling southeast out across the ocean towards the continent. The blanket of fumes was so thick in parts that it forced some of the nearby M1 between junction 6 and 10 to be closed. Well, the cloud is not believed to be toxic, however awful it looked, but people in its path are being warned to take sensible precautions. Sky's Ashish Joshi has more.
It's not believed to be toxic, but this cloud of thick black smoke is now mixing with the air being breathed in by the residents of Hemel Hempstead and surrounding areas. And that, say experts, may have health implications, depending on how much of the polluted air is inhaled. There are a number of different chemicals in the smoke, and petroleum products are known to produce a whole series of nasty acidic chemicals as well as carbon monoxide. All of these are irritants, which could have a number of side effects. The eyes are particularly susceptible to pollutants. They could become sore and watery. Coughing will be an obvious sign, as the lining of the lungs are irritated, making breathing difficult. This could induce nausea, as oxygen levels in the bloodstream could become reduced. The advice is to stay inside and to seal windows and doors. Anyone who thinks they've been exposed to harmful levels of the smoke is advised to call the NHS helpline.
If people are experiencing those sorts of respiratory symptoms, that they should contact their general practitioner or go to the local A&E department or to come to the A&E department here. As I said, we are prepared to see people if they've got respiratory complications.
The cold winter air meant the cloud of smoke couldn't travel upwards high into the atmosphere, but instead had to spread out lower to the ground. It is now moving slowly southwards.
It also brings behind it a slight shift of wind, or with it.
But weather forecasters say there is unlikely to be a great deal of movement over the next 48 hours.
The smoke actually can't rise above about 1,000 feet because there's almost like a cap on it. So then it spreads out, and you can see on the satellite picture that it has spread out west and south and east.
That's when it will pose less of a risk to health. Until then, residents are urged to stay inside and minimise the risk of exposure. Ashish Joshi, Sky News.
Dr. Carol Cooper joins us now in the Sky News Centre studio. Evening, Carol. How worried should we about this huge cloud of smoke?
I don't think there's any point in worrying unnecessarily, but if you're in an area where there is smoke, where you can either see it or smell it strongly, then you should stay indoors, and that means staying indoors with the windows and doors shut. Now that it's dark, it may be quite difficult to know if you're in a smoke-filled area, but use your nose if you can. And those of us who can't see much smoke or can only see smoke high up and far away should be perfectly safe.
What are we looking for? Presumably it's people with respiratory and breathing problems that are most at risk here.
That's right, Jeremy. People who've got asthma, who have got chronic lung disease, and also people who have heart problems are at risk because their levels of oxygen might fall dramatically and destabilise their situation. But yes, it is mainly people with chronic lung disease, including asthma. The smoke has hundreds of different hydrocarbons which are irritants. They irritate the lining of the airways, they cause the airways to narrow, they cause shortness of breath, cough and wheeze, and can trigger an asthma attack.
Carol, I've got one of these little sort of medical face masks. I'll just put it on now. And is this the sort of thing, is this quite advisable? People should wear something like this if they're anywhere close? Does it help to have one of these medical masks?
Well, it is a help, but it only lasts for a certain length of time. So after about half an hour or so, it's much less useful than in the first few minutes that you put it on. It's not the entire answer. It's not as good as, say, the kind of breathing apparatus that firefighters have, no way. But it is a bit of help. And the other thing that people can do if they really have to go out, I would stress they shouldn't go out into really thick smoke, but some people are going to have to go out into a slightly smoky atmosphere perhaps and go to work tomorrow morning, and what they can do is make every effort to breathe through their nose rather than their mouths, not to talk while they're outside walking, because obviously they're going to have to breathe through their mouths if they do that. And you can also, in this cold weather, it's quite welcome anyway, but you can put a scarf to cover your nose and mouth, which will help partially filter out the smoke.
Dr. Carol Cooper, some very good advice there. I'm sure everybody will heed that if they're anywhere near the smokestack that's currently dominating the night sky here. Thank you very much. Let's go straight across to our central London studios. Alan Duncan, MP, is the Shadow Secretary of State for Transport. He's also a man who's spent a lot of his working life in the oil industry as an advisor and so on. Very good evening to you, Mr. Duncan. Was this the accident that we've all been waiting to happen in the oil industry?
No, but I think the oil industry has a very good reputation for maintaining the highest imaginable standards of safety, so they always work to prevent something like this and fear that something like this might happen. Now today there has been a massive explosion. It's very puzzling and perplexing to know what the cause was. I think we can be relieved that it was not a terrorist attack, relieved that it was on a Sunday and that the injuries have been so light compared with what they could possibly have been had this happened during a working day. So I think, of course, there's going to have to be a proper inquiry into what happened. At the moment, one can only speculate, but we're speculating against a background of knowing that in Britain, the oil industry does have a very good reputation for high standards of safety.
You don't think there's going to have to be a rethink then about the close proximity of a huge storage depot like this, the 5th largest in the UK, to residential areas has been very apparent from the pictures today?
Yes, and I think that is exactly the sort of question that we should very sensibly ask on the back of the sort of accident inquiry that I'm sure will happen. I think that any kind of dangerous chemical or combustible material that is stored has to be stored in at a safe distance from anyone that might be affected if it were to blow up. So with urban sprawl and ever-increasing development, this kind of question, of course, has to be asked. And I don't think we are in the mood or are inclined to apportion blame at the moment, either for the accident or for the fact that this storage base was there. But of course, looking to the future, we do have to ask questions like that, yes.
And are you comfortable with the sort of level of information that's being given out to the public generally so far from the government and from the authorities about how to cope with it, how to deal with it, how to react to what we've seen here.
Yes, and if I can add to that list, broadcasting companies such as yours, because I first saw it all on Sky this morning when I woke up. Phoned my mother, actually, who'd pretty well been knocked out of bed by the noise. She doesn't live too far away. But I think that local radio, broadcasting organisations such as Sky have done an enormous amount of good, I think, in calming things, in explaining what the situation is, in making sure that there's no panic buying either of petrol, which, by the way, is not necessary. Don't go out and buy petrol that you don't need to buy. The oil industry, I'm sure, will react to this very sensibly tomorrow and guarantee continuity of supply. So I think also in terms of keeping out of the smoke and getting as many fire tenders there as possible, I think everyone appears to have reacted in a commendable way, and perhaps I can take this opportunity to congratulate all the emergency services, the police, fire, ambulance, and everyone who has reacted to it. It's a big incident which appears to have been very well handled.
Alan Duncan MP, the Shadow Transport spokesman for the Conservatives, thank you very much indeed. Let's remind you all, you're watching Sky News Live at 5, and these are the main headlines this evening. The biggest fire in the history of peacetime Europe, according to fire chiefs, is still burning here at a fire depot in Hemel Hempstead. A series of large explosions early this morning injured 43 people, 2 of them seriously. The blast blew out windows and caused widespread damage in the surrounding area. Around 2,000 people living near the site have been cleared away from their homes. Many are still in evacuation centres or staying with friends and family. The fire sent a huge plume of thick black smoke into the skies over southeast England. That smoke heading to the continent now. Part of the M1 had to be closed. People are being told to stay indoors if they're close to that smoke, keep their windows and doors closed because of the fumes. Well, we're talking about, in the wake of the blast, about the number of people who've been evacuated from the area, a lot of them staying with friends and family, but some have been taken to evacuation centres. Sky's Jeff Mead was the first reporter on the scene this morning. He lives pretty close by, and he's with us now with some of the evacuees. A long day for you and a long day for the people who were blown out of their beds this morning, Jeff.
Very much so, Jeremy. We're just around the corner from you at Jarman Park. That's a local leisure centre here. Normally, of course, at this time on a Sunday evening, it would be busy with people coming to the cinema or the nightclubs here. In fact, it's crowded now with they've had about 300 evacuees through here in the course of the day. Mostly people whose homes are inside the exclusion zone or whose homes even outside that zone have been so badly damaged they can't return to them, and they're waiting tonight. About 40 of them are waiting for transport onto hotels or bed and breakfast for the night. Let's talk to one or two of them. Chris, starting with you, what's your overriding memory of the Big Bang this morning?
Well, I don't know a lot about it because I was just coming from work. But I come round the corner and I saw my wife standing in the middle of the street. I saw some people, I saw flashes of cars going by, assuming they were police. And bearing in mind it was a very icy morning as well, so I thought that was a bit unusual because it's usually pretty clear when I come home. And then I come round the corner, walking up to my door, and my wife said to me that there'd been a big explosion over at Buncefield Terminal, and she knows a bit more about what actually happened.
Her in. Jerry, you're here with old Danielle, your granddaughter there. What was happening? When were you aware of what's going on?
As soon as the first explosion happened, which was just after 6 o'clock this morning, it literally almost blew me out of bed. It was that bad. My stepson shouted from the back of the house that there'd been an explosion, and I there was just huge flames right up across the trees. It was absolutely awful, really awful.
How have they been looking after you here at this centre?
We've been here since about 8:30 this morning, actually. They've been very, very good, I must admit. Local companies have been great, donating things for the baby and keeping us in plenty of tea and coffee. It's been very good.
Danielle seems very untroubled by it all. I suppose it's rather sad in a way.
She is.
Won't remember this. You'll have to tell her all about it.
Yes, we will have to. Yes, yes. Famous baby for a little while anyway. But she's been very good. She just needs to sleep now, though. She's very tired. But we've been told that they've found accommodation for us, so we're going off to a hotel now. So hopefully it'll be okay.
I hope so. Let's talk now to another of the refugees, I suppose I can call you that, Samantha. You've been here how long today?
I've not been here from the early hours. I went round a friend sort of straight after. I've come up here to find some work people actually, but no luck as of yet. I think they've been moved on.
You can't, what's the situation at home? You can't get back to where you live?
No, well, we've been told that we're not allowed to go back there tonight. I know a few people that actually have gone back, but myself, I don't really want to chance it. So I'm going to go and stay at a friend's house tonight, so I'm okay.
I guess the next few days are going to be the difficult ones because you'll see how bad the damage is and what needs doing, what the repairs are going to be like.
I mean, yeah, it's a complete shock as it is. I mean, I woke up this morning to, well, awful. I can't really explain it. It was dreadful. I mean, I've never... I
hope it works out and I hope everything is resolved finally. I've been here, Jeremy, 11 hours ago I arrived, just after 6:30 this morning. One thing that's got worse outside is the atmosphere. You're feeling it, I know, that awful sort of oily smell, huge plume of smoke. What's different is the atmosphere in here. Couldn't be warmer. It's the British spirit at its best.
Jeff, thank you very much. Jeff, one of the many Sky reporters out who's had a long day along with the people of this Hemel Hempstead area who were very rudely awoken this morning by this huge blast at 6:03, followed by two more later, and we've heard another couple in the last hour or so. So storage tanks still exploding down at the Buncefield depot. You can't see it really very clearly in the night sky now, but a huge black plume of smoke has been drifting up from here now for almost 12 hours since the explosion this morning. It's been heading largely south and east of here. So I thought let's check in with our Sky News weather presenter Joe Wheeler to find out exactly where it's heading for, at what height, and how wide the distribution and dissipation of this, Joe.
Well, of course, these are things we've been watching very carefully through the course of the day. You can see here on the satellite picture that plume of smoke as it rose into the air. This was taken a little bit earlier today because obviously now that it's dark it's much more difficult to spot. But certainly as far as the weather is concerned, is the fact that this explosion could be heard from such a distance. There were reports of it being heard in Ipswich, reports from Holland that they'd heard the blast. Now, as meteorologists, we have to say, well, why was it heard so far afield? And the answer is there's a temperature inversion at the moment, and that is capping our atmosphere. And this is also the reason why this smoke is not just rising and escaping and disappearing, and why it could cause problems for us over the next couple of days. So in essence then, this pollution as it goes up into the air is becoming trapped. It can't go any further, and it's starting to move slowly as a mass, very, very slowly southwards. In fact, it's moving southwards at about the same rate as the wind speed, which is around 9 or 10 knots. Now, there are some smoke tops reported as high as 9,000 feet, but generally over London, they're between 2,000 and 5,000 feet. So high enough not to cause too many problems, but low enough to still cause some concern. Now, in essence, it's the high pressure that's kept us so calm and settled, given us frost and fog over the past week, 10 days, that has given us this temperature inversion and could cause problems. Now, tonight we have actually got an area of cloud and rain, which is working its way southwards down through the country, and this is going to be, to a degree, our saving grace, because as this works its way southwards, it's going to stir up the winds just a little bit, clearing the south coast by dawn tomorrow. And as it goes, it's going to take some of this pollution with it. Admittedly, some of it will fall to the ground, but in essence, it should disperse. Now, the downside to all of this is that behind this rain belt, we get another area of high pressure building. So it's still cold air. We still like to see some mist and fog. But also, if the fires keep burning, then again, we're going to have this temperature inversion. And again, we'll start to see that pollution trapped. So let's hope that certainly through this evening and overnight, those winds stir up enough to start to disperse that cloud and to melt it away to places where it won't cause too many problems. In the meantime, as you've heard, please do take care. And then as far as we're concerned, so that rain clears away, we see more sunshine tomorrow, and who knows what the new day will bring.
Thanks very much, Joe. Well, Sky News was first to show pictures of the explosion this morning, and that was largely thanks to the viewers who sent us some extraordinary images of the first moments of this disaster. So let's take a look at how you captured the morning's events and listen to the words of those of you who were here to witness it.
I was asleep in bed, woken up by the explosion, as most of Hemel Hempstead has as well. We live just on the other side of the town, and we experienced the whole house rocking and being woken up like that. The whole sky went bright orange. sort of over the rooftops, you could see the flames licking, and that's a good, 2-3 miles away. Apparently the roof slightly lifted, the whole house rocked. There's a big crack in the ceiling down the hallway, it's lifted the loft hatch out. Apparently they're evacuating all the people that are in the hotel nearer to Buncefield, 50-60 foot flames licking up in the sky from the depot.
Out clubbing for the night and got woken up by this massive explosion. Thought nothing of it at first and just saw like the sky was flickering through the curtain. Pulled back the curtain and just saw all these flames above the rooftops. And then went out into the street, and I think everyone down the street was coming out to see what had gone on.
6:10, I had the explosion, and I shot out the house to see what it was, because I thought something seriously happened. I got into the industrial estate of Hemel Hempstead, just behind the fuel dump, and what I heard first was all the alarms going off. And basically, as I was getting closer to the fire, I noticed all the buildings were smashed and falling down. But then I spoke to someone else who was just around the corner, and he explained to me, you better get out. One of the petrol dumps, one of them had exploded, and he thought that the other one will explode next to it.
And this is likely to go on for some considerable time. And I mean, I'm not a fire officer and haven't been a fire officer, but I would think this is going to take some considerable time to put out.
Some extraordinary pictures and extraordinary words from many Sky viewers who were around and alert very early this morning. Not surprisingly alert, as they'd been pretty much kicked out of their beds by the force of the blast. And sure, as the day's gone on, another word has cropped up in their thoughts: insurance. The fire at this fuel terminal has not only disrupted the lives of the people living in the area, but it's also going to affect businesses as well in the area, and particularly just before Christmas. Joining me now is the director from Harris Claims Group, Jonathan Samuelson, an expert in these matters. Jonathan, good to see you. Apart from anything else, you're a nearby resident, so you felt the impact of it all.
Absolutely. I thought a tree had fallen on our house this morning, and I went up into the loft as the loft door had fallen down to see, I was expecting to see an oak tree or something in there, and it was a little while until I watched the news and realised what had happened.
Now, lots of people, I mean, the first thing, most people are going to be grateful they came away with their lives, considering
Absolutely.
the force of the blast. The next thing is, when they look at their property and their businesses, they're going to think, oh dear.
Well, there are going to be, for businesses, there's going to be a couple of issues. Those people who are actually on the surrounding estates, it's going to be several days or possibly weeks until they can get in to their businesses. And in the run-up to Christmas, that's a disaster for them, because they're not going to be able to get at their stock, even if, assuming that their stock is in a saleable condition. The actual blast, as it hit the buildings, will have lifted the roofs off many of them, actually lifted the whole buildings off of their foundations, and it's unlikely that they will have gone back down where they're supposed to. So there's going to be a lot of buildings that are going to have to be taken down. That's going to lead to a lot of businesses looking for new premises all at the same time, all in the same area, so their staff can get to their places of work.
I suppose when they start looking at their insurance policies, which many of them will be doing now, if not tomorrow morning, they'll be coming to you and saying, how can we get some cash to keep us going in the short term? How the speed of claim delivery?
Yeah, cash flow is everything for most businesses, and it's going to depend on their insurance companies being persuaded to part with some cash quickly. And sometimes they're happy to do that, and sometimes they're not so happy to do it. Generally, insurance companies don't like parting with money before they absolutely have to.
So you're on the policy holders side of the team.
I'm on the side of the angels.
Right.
Yes, we do battle with the insurance companies and the loss adjusters who are acting for the insurance companies to make sure that the policy holders get what they're entitled to under their policy, and also to advise them as to what they should do. Finding alternative premises, what do they say to their staff, what do they say to their customers, how can they get at their stock, and all of those kind of issues.
But the general feeling is there's a pretty good chance of people around here in serious need getting their hands on some money to tide them over in the short term.
Well, it's going to depend on how the insurance companies react, and there have been instances this year in Carlisle, for example, after the floods, where there were all sorts of problems arranging alternative premises and getting quick cash payments from insurers. If you're with a reputable insurance company, they get on and pay claims, and there's not going to be major liability problems, I wouldn't expect, arising from this, because it's quite clear what happened. But it's still going to be a major issue for companies in a critical time for many of them in just the few weeks that are left before Christmas.
Absolutely. Jonathan Samuelson, thank you very much for your expert advice. So, one of the many things that's going to be troubling local people around here and their businesses and homes, trying to put things back together after this enormous blast. But the most remarkable thing is that when you look at the scale of that fire tonight, still burning on almost 12 hours after the explosions this morning, that there were no fatalities. We'll tell you more about the blast, its impact and the implications coming up after this break.
There's a new day at Sky News.
I'll be teaming up with Lorna Dunkley each weekday morning from 6 a.m. to bring you a bright new sunrise.
All of the news at home and abroad that people need to know for the day ahead.
I'll be covering all the issues that matter most to you from across the country. Obviously, we're going to be covering the major news stories of the day, but in addition to that, we're going to be focusing on human interest stories.
All this and the latest breaking stories. Sky News. News people.
No more arguments over map reading and which way to turn. Our lowest ever price TomTom GPS, just $219.
Online or in store, the best of both worlds this Christmas.
Technology has made your morning easier. Why not just shave? The new Philips Smart Touch XL is designed to shave more with every touch, with 3 shaving rings, not 1. And because now it pivots to stay on your face and neck, even tricky hairs are cut. Make every stroke count.
118 24/7. Oh, hello, yes. Could you give me the number for a dog training school in Guildford, please? I'd particularly like one that does home visits.
I'll text you the number.
Text me? No, could you actually put me straight through?
118 24/7. Whatever you want, just yell.
Fancy doing something different with potatoes? Leave it to McCain, the potato experts.
Very good evening. You're watching Sky News live at 5 this Sunday evening from Hemel Hempstead, the biggest fire in the history of peacetime Europe, still burning right here at a fuel depot on the outskirts of Hemel Hempstead. A series of large explosions early this morning injured 43 people, 2 of them seriously, remarkably no fatalities. The blast blew out windows and caused widespread damage in the surrounding area. Some 2,000 people living near the site were cleared from their homes. Many are still staying with friends or in evacuation centres. The fire sent a huge plume of thick black smoke high into the skies over southeast England, and part of the M1's been closed. People are being told to stay inside and keep their windows and doors closed because of these fumes.
Where are the boys?
They didn't want to come.
We won a game. People would say that
few years. So far, the company is unveiled.
And also out on oil wells and oil ships. So what do you make of this one, and what are they going to do about it?
Well, this is, there's no question about it, this is a very, very large fire. How they deal with it, well, it's very much dependent upon circumstances on site. So I'd initially say that the first moves they would do, and from what I've been watching the news with yourselves, is that they appear to have started the first phase, which is containment, which is containing the incident so it doesn't spread off-site. Initially, obviously, there were off-site implications. The next move is to try and contain the incident on-site, so it's not going to spread further on-site. And once they've secured and been comfortable that they can contain this incident from spreading any further, then there's decisions to be made. The first decision I would think they would be looking at is, can we put it out? Can we extinguish this fire, or should we just try and control the fire and let it burn itself out? There's many factors that they would have to think of when making the decision like that. When you come to having a control and letting the fire burn itself down, obviously there's this huge environmental impact of the smoke going in the atmosphere, which is a consideration because dependent upon the conditions of some of these tanks that are on fire, and I don't know the conditions of these tanks, but some you will find will be blazing completely, some will have limited fires on the roofs of these tanks, and by having limited fires it means that the fire is going to take longer to burn through the product in the tank, and you could be talking of a number of days, 4, 5, 6 days possibly, with some of these tanks. Then you've got the problem, sorry.
I was just going to say there's certainly talk at the press conference and talking to some of the firefighters around here of attacking the fire once they have the right products in place, and they've been talking about getting in foam concentrate and preparing to try and douse the fire with foam and with foam from what they describe as the sort of 6-gun cannons. When will they make that decision, do you think?
Well, that decision will probably have already been made as to whether they're going to make an concerted attack, and that was my next phase, was going to say that I think they will probably make a consideration that they can handle this incident. There's very much a mutual aid group between all the municipal fire departments in the UK and all the oil industry in the UK. They have various organisations, and the fire, although the oil companies are competing with each other, when it comes to fire and safety, they combine together. And I've no doubt they will be pulling in support. Indeed, from the area where I live in Essex, I know that they have pulled in one of our company's big guns that they have on one of the oil refineries there. We've offered support of further gun. We've also offered support of up to 100,000 litres of foam. They're going to need probably somewhere in the region of, unbelievably, 400,000, 500,000 litres of foam. If they've got 17 tanks alight, they've got ground fire. It's not just a matter of putting the tank out. It's a matter of once you put it out, you've got to keep it out. And you cannot afford, once you start attacking, to stop your attack. Because if you run out of foam 3/4 of the way through that fire, then gradually the fire will burn itself all the way back to where you were to start with. So they've got to have sufficient foam, and the foam will be supplied from other refineries. It'll be supplied from people like ourselves with Ansell, who manufacture the foam on our behalf, and other foam suppliers as well. They will get sufficient on site. Then they will use the big cannons, which we have a number of our cannons at various facilities around the UK, and these cannons can throw this foam 100, 150 metres. So, and the one issue they do need to consider is wind direction. You've got a wind change, as I understand, coming about, and if you're talking about a 24 hours, there's going to be a considerable wind change. And you must, when you set up, you must set up for a certain time that you are planning to attack for the wind conditions at that time. Because as you look at the picture, you can all see that you would fight it from upwind. You certainly couldn't get involved downwind because it would just be too hot. You would be burnt to a crisp downwind of that fire.
Kelvin Hardingham, thank you very much for your expert advice on that. Sounds like a pretty big task ahead, and as you say, with added complications of wind change as well. Thank you. Well, truck driver Terry Hine was at that depot when the explosion happened this morning. He was just about 500 feet away from the seat of the blast and said he was very lucky to have survived. This is how Terry described the experience to Sky News.
It was just a normal day. We just pulled in. We have to queue up. I was at the front of a queue because all the lorries were in the loading bays filling up. But I could see in between the tanks, the storage tanks, we're facing them with our backs towards the entrance gate. So we're looking at the storage gates, and there was two Tesco's tanker drivers next to me. And I could see in between the tanks, and it just seems like so much. It looked like smoke just coming out the side of one of the containers. But where I've only been there 6 months, I didn't know. I just thought they might have been cooling off the tanks or whatever, and it just. But I didn't think nothing of it. But apparently the two Tesco drivers, they see it and all, and they went over to the office to get someone. In which time I pulled alongside the tank, sat there for another minute, and then as soon as the lorry left the loading bay, I pulled on and went to load the lorry. But I noticed the other drivers who was in the loading bays looking kind of puzzled, looking back at the tanks. So I got out of the lorry, and the guy from the Tesco drivers and that started walking away towards the gates, telling everyone to get away. So we just carried on walking towards the gates, leaving the lorries, shutting all the electric off. That's when all the plant shut down, all the electric went off immediately. And then all of a sudden we heard all the alarm bells ringing in the terminal, and we must have took 5 or 6 more steps, and then there was just a massive explosion. All stuff was flying past us, pipes and things like that, and we was walking up. We just picked ourselves up, don't know how far it threw us, and we just run towards the gates. We had to find holes in the gates because it's all secure there, and scramble through. There was 5 drivers I believe there, and 2 guys in the office where we get the bill of lading from. Apparently everyone got out. I looked round and I saw an old guy who works for me, Morris. He was finding it hard to run, so I went back, grabbed his arm, and we were dragging him down. And it's then when I saw the flames, because I looked back and they was massive, they was huge, and I just felt like we wasn't far enough away from it, and we was just getting away from it as quick as we could, as far away as possible. Well, the force of the blast threw all of us forward onto the floor. I've hurt me back. It's hurt me back. It just felt like 3 or 4 men just really pushed you hard from behind. But other than that, everyone just seemed to get out miraculously, unarmed, just minor injuries. And when you see the extent of it on the TV, and when I think back and remember the big orange flash all round us, how it lit up the yard, the stuff flying past us, the shaking of the ground, and then I looked at the office where we get the bill of lading from, and it was just devastated. So all the buildings and equipment around us got so badly damaged, but every single one of us got to our feet and managed to run. And we did run, we really did run. I've never run.
I bet he did. Terry Heim, one lucky fella there. We're going to be hearing some more eyewitness accounts coming up after the break, but that blaze is still intense tonight. The black column of smoke still pouring into the night sky over Hemel Hempstead. Nearly 12 hours after those blasts that blew apart the Buncefield Oil Storage Depot this morning. More on Live at 5 after this.
The true story of how the king fell. Death by excess. Elvis. Thursday at 9. Sky One, baby.
Some things get better with time. At Orange, you can get 10% off your line rental after the first year, growing to 25%.
Reason 273. A 12-pack of Pepsi, Diet Pepsi, or Pepsi Max, now only £1.99. More reasons to shop at Morrison's.
Life can make your hair thin, New Pantene Pro V Full and Thick Collection. Our unique Pro-Vitamin lightweight formula penetrates hair deep, leaving your hair looking noticeably fuller and thicker in just 7 days. New Pantene Pro V Full and Thick. More to play with. Pantene is now recommended by the Institute of Trichologists, the UK's hair experts since 1902.
I think I'll have a little clean up round here. This new Flash All-in-One is something else. Not only is it superb on the usual household surfaces, it leaves glass spotless too. The new Flash All-in-One, the all-purpose cleaner that also works on glass.
In rural Russia, some people still believe you can cure the symptoms of a cold by jumping into an icy pool. Well, we don't. Because when you've got a headache, blocked nose, sore throat and chesty cough, only we can give your cold the Beecham's All-in-One. Until there's a cure, there's Beecham's.
DKNY, the fragrance for women and now for men.
Shoot, eject, play. The DVD Handycam from Sony.
Welcome back to Hemel Hempstead. You're watching Sky News live at 5, live from what is seen as the biggest fire in the history of peacetime Europe. And it's still burning tonight here at a fuel depot on the outskirts of the town of Hemel Hempstead. A series of large explosions early this morning injured 43 people. 2 of them seriously, remarkably no fatalities though. The blast blew out windows and caused widespread damage in the surrounding area. Some 2,000 people living near the site were cleared from their homes. Many are still in evacuation centres or staying with friends and family. The fire sent a huge plume of black, thick smoke into the skies over southeast England. Part of the M1's been closed. People are being told to stay inside and keep their windows and doors closed because of these fumes. Well, of course, it wasn't just those at the terminal who felt the force of the explosion. A little bit earlier, I spoke to Ian Stowe, who was injured in the blast when it hit his home. And Sky's Enda Brady's down at that home now. Enda?
Hello Jeremy, yes, I'm talking to you from Hunter's Oak, which is a housing estate approximately 1 mile away from the centre of this morning's explosions. Just to give you an idea of how the blasts impacted on people here, virtually every property in this close has been affected in some way. These French windows were completely blown out, they've been rehinged now, and just to give you an idea of the impact, this is a security lock that was actually attached to the inside of those doors. You can see it's completely twisted and the screws shot out as well. The owner of the property actually found it 5 yards away in the kitchen. We can just move along. If you just follow me, you can see a window completely blown out here. That's boarded up. Everyone in this close has some damage to their property, primarily windows and conservatories and what have you. Here's more French windows just plastered up, and it's a bit of a make-do job really until people can get here and get it fixed properly. But the owner of this property, Ian Stowe, I can tell you is not too worried, because Ian, you're a very fortunate man really. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, we feel we're very lucky. I was in bed asleep at 6 o'clock this morning, and I was woken up by the most enormous impact. It honestly felt like I'd been hit by a bus, and it turned out that was the windows, including the frames, caving into the bedroom and sort of showering me with glass and bits of wood and so on. But as you say, we'll sort this all out in due course. We just feel incredibly lucky that we're all safe. This is superficial. This'll heal. My family are fine. We've got back into the property, and that's a major plus for us. And compared to some of our neighbours who aren't so lucky, we've got heating tonight, which is great.
Now, of the 41 casualties classed as walking wounded, you were the first to be treated at Hemel Hempstead
Yeah,
Hospital.
as far as I can make out, I was the first one down there. Yeah.
How did they cope there?
Oh, they were fantastic. They were great. They didn't have any more idea than I did what had actually happened. But as I was down there were increasing numbers of medical staff arriving, anticipating that there were going to be more casualties. And they were great. They looked after me splendidly. And by the time I got back here, this was the wonderful thing, by the time I got back here, our neighbours had actually secured the property. So they'd done these patio doors that you referred to were actually lying on the patio. They'd been completely wrenched off, and the neighbours had screwed those back into the frames for me to keep the place secure. So fabulous.
A lot of people have said to me today, just remarkable community spirit here in Hemel Hempstead today. Everyone pulling together as one community and really helping each other out.
Yeah, very much. And people have been looking for any pieces of timber they could find, old benches being knocked apart to get the planks out of them to help people to secure their properties, so that we didn't know whether we were likely to be evacuated. It was always a possibility if the wind changed direction and the smoke came this way. So we did all want to make sure that if we had to go, that at least we could leave our houses secure.
When you woke up this morning so abruptly,
yes,
what went through your mind?
Well, I didn't know. It felt like I'd been hit by something. So the first thing that went through my mind was something has come through the back of the house and given me a heck of a whack. And I need to find what it was, because the thing we didn't know, will be better to get out of the house, to stay in the house here. Is it a bomb that's come in through the window, and is something else going to happen? So yeah, headless chicken would be the best expression to describe me for the first few minutes, or an unseeing headless chicken.
What's the prognosis for your eye? Is everything okay?
That'll be fine, yep. I'm chronically short-sighted anyway, so that's not going to get any better, but I've got to go back to hospital tomorrow to get it washed out again, but it'll be fine. No games of squash for a few days, but I'll be right as rain after that.
And just tell me...
No more than one thing, so one day we might be hit by an asteroid, or the Martians have landed, or whatever. No real thought about that. Because apart from anything else, that depot is kept incredibly neat and tidy and secure. So not the sort of place you'd anticipate that sort of accident, really.
Okay, Ian, thanks for joining us. We wish you a speedy recovery. So the overall feeling here in Hemel Hempstead amongst residents tonight, one of overwhelming relief. I bet it is. Enda, thank you very much. And to Ian Stowe, another remarkable story. One of many of those who survived the blast today, when many people, when they first saw it, would have thought that it might have done a great deal more damage and might have caused fatalities. So remarkable that it happened on a Sunday morning early when the plant wasn't too full, and remarkable that it didn't cause more damage to human life as well as property. Emergency planning expert Jeff Charlton of Disasters UK has been talking to us throughout the afternoon. He joins me now from the Sky News studios. Jeff, I know your big concern really is that perhaps not enough being done to get the message out there for people about how they're going to cope, not just today, but in the hours and days to come.
Well, Jeremy, it's Roger Young, but the message is going to be Roger. Pushed out over the next few days, driven by the strategic planning with the gold level command at the police headquarters. They will be determining the messages that need to go out to the public and pushing them out, driven by proper intelligence with all the right kind of information coming in.
Good stuff. Sorry about that, Roger. Well, let's bring in Jeff now. I know Jeff's not far away. So Jeff, you've obviously got concerns about the public information aspect of this, getting the message over so people know what to do when they're at home or setting off to work tomorrow.
That's right. It's as simple as what's going on. We can see what's happened. Let's do some foresight now and get some information from the authorities on what's going to happen tomorrow. They should be able to work out where that smoke's going. They've spent lots of money on plume management software. So they should be able to tell us, so people will know that it's safe to go to work, and that if they are in a danger zone, that they know what they would do. It's no good saying, oh well, I'm going to go to a hospital that's within or downwind of the smoke. Let's start looking at advising people to say, well, if there is an incident and the smoke continues to go to the southeast, then maybe people want to go to the west, travel to the west to avoid the smoke and go to hospitals.
Jeff and Roger, thank you both for your input for the moment. Of course, also thanks to the very many Sky viewers who've been involved in this story right from the start. Many of you were very quick to inform us first thing today that you'd been rudely woken by a blast at your local oil plant, and these are some of the images that you've sent us during the course of the day. Stills and moving pictures that tell us only too vividly the story of the day's events, and these show the extraordinary intensity from 10 seconds the dawn broke right the way through. Smoke billowed as the first light came up today, and you can see the plumes of smoke above the fire as the day started to brighten, and it just showed the density and intensity of that huge black smokestack rising ever higher into the day's sky and heading off southeast. And these stills, of course, showed just some of the damage around the edge of the plant. A lot of people had their parts of their homes damaged. These are some of the buildings on the edge of the compound which have been seriously damaged. And then, of course, that extraordinary pewter leaden sky that has hung over us all day here, blacking out what should have been a really nice, chilly, sunny day here around Hemel Hempstead. Thank you all for your part in this story. Thanks for sending us your pictures. More at the top of the hour on Sky News.